Welcome to episode 1 of the Retirement Insights podcast with Jim Musgrave. I'm James Anderson and I'm joined by Jim Musgrave. Jim, it's great to be with you.
Yeah, it's great to be with you too, James. I'm excited about this initial podcast.
Yeah, I think it'll be really great for people. And really, it begs the question, why are you starting a podcast? Why doing it now and why a podcast?
That's a great question. So I've been doing this, I've been in the business for over 25 years. And what I've, realized just doing this a lot and meeting with a lot of people is that, first of all, they don't teach this information there's a huge demand for good financial information. That's the number one thing. But two, I just feel that, when I talk about concepts with people, remember, financial planning, there's not one right way to do it, right? You could do this, you could do that, and you're constantly comparing different scenarios. And what I find is that if you don't have a certain base of knowledge, then some of the concepts that I talk about just kind of may go over your head. You don't quite understand them. And, one of the things is that I kind of had, I was doing a client event earlier this week, and a woman who was kind of, she brought her husband and she came. She was not a client of mine. She was kind of interviewing advisors, and I invited her to my client meal. And I was going through different ways that, you can address bear market recessions and minimize taxes and minimize risk and all these great tools. I was specifically talking about tools in the toolbox. And she goes, "Well, sounds like you're very, very pro annuity." It's like, I hate annuities. I think they're the worst things in the world. And so, and that's one of those, that's just an example that her perception of annuities was based on her knowledge, right? Where the reality is that there's a lot of stuff that she was not aware of that I know about. And quite frankly, a lot of my clients who own annuities, I'm not saying annuities are good or bad. They're just a tool in the toolbox. So it kind of got me thinking about, it's like, if what you thought was true turned out not to be true, when would you want to know? And it kind of got me thinking about why I'm doing this. And there's a concept that it called the circle of knowledge. Okay. And that circle of knowledge, represents all the information that's in the universe, right? It's everything that exists. And there's a subset of this circle of knowledge, which is information that you know to be true. So let me ask you, James, so give me an example of something that you absolutely know is true, like without a doubt.
I know my birth date. I know the names of my kids.
Right. So you absolutely know those things. Great example. Now, there's another subset of knowledge of things that we know we don't know. So let me ask you this. Can you give me an example of something that you know you don't know?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not a neurosurgeon.
You and I are not brain surgeons, but we know that, there's a guy or gal who can cut open our head, do surgery, and make us better. So we are consciously aware that we are incompetent in brain surgery, there's a lot of stuff that I'm incompetent about in terms of, there's a lot of stuff I know I don't know. And the other thing is that everything else in the universe lies in what we call the blind spot. So the blind spot is an area that we are unconsciously incompetent in everything else, right? So it doesn't mean that the information doesn't exist. It just means that we're just not aware of the information. It's our blind spot. I'll give you an example. So have you ever been driving in the car? You look in your rearview mirror and you don't see anything. You want to switch lanes. Let's say you want to go you want to get to the left lane. So you look in your rearview mirror, you don't see a car behind you. You look in your right mirror, you don't see a car. And all of a sudden you look in the left mirror and boom, that car was right there. And so,
all the time.
It was, and that car was going the exact same speed you were going. So it was like literally in your blind spot. It was in that one spot that you didn't see it. So it's not that car, just magically showed up. It just was in your blind spot until you saw it. So, what I want to do in this series of podcasts is that I want to make sure that I provide information and I want to reduce your blind spot. I want to make sure that there's the information that's out there that, the more you know, the better the financial decisions that you're going to make. And so just to kind of go through here, so there's three different ways that you can expand what you know. One is that you can, the places that you go and the experiences. Like, I'll give you an example. What's a country that you would like to learn more about, that you've never been to before, you'd like to experience it?
I have always wanted to go to Ireland. It's always
Perfect.
been a dream of mine to go to Ireland.
Great. All right. So you could go to Ireland, you could book a flight, hotels, tours, and you can experience Ireland yourself. Now, you may not have the time or the money, but you could certainly go to the library or, download a something, on your Kindle, and you could read about Ireland, right? Personal study. And then the other thing you could do was that you could talk to people who actually are from Ireland and just talk to them. Oh, yeah, this is where I grew up. These are things that we do. This is about the culture. So these are three different ways that you can, kind of gain knowledge, is to, go there, read, and have that information be transferred from other people. So there's also this little sliver, and this is information that we believe is true, but actually it isn't true. And I'll give you an example of that. Centuries ago, people thought that the world was flat, right? So that's what it is. I mean, we don't, we just see it to the horizon, and the world is flat. It was reasonable at that point because they didn't have the other information. So, Columbus sailed across and eventually it got back to say, hey, listen, I think the world is round. And so that changed people's perception. And so sometimes we have opinions, and we have opinions on things, and based on information that we have, but we may not have all the right information. And I think about the woman who said, I think annuities are bad. And it wasn't that they're bad. She just didn't have the information that I have, and quite frankly, the rest of my clients have, that it's just a tool in the toolbox. It does certain things that investments can't do.
That's super interesting. As you were talking about that, I thought of, there's this new TV series on Amazon called Jack Reacher, or it's called Reacher. It's the kind of basis behind Jack Reacher. And in the 2 seasons, it kind of has this general theme that he says something that's always been kind of interesting. And that is, in an investigation, assumptions kill. Now, he's talking about battle and war and all those kinds of things, but as it pertains to retirement, especially in retirement, when you're going to make decisions that impact how much money you have for the rest of your life or how much income you have each year, assumptions do and can truly kill or uplift your retirement. They can either make it or break it in so many different ways.
Well, that's why I always say, like in my workshops, it's like, you got to run the numbers. Like, for example, when I get my Social Security workshop, people say, oh, I want to file at 62 or my full retirement age or 70. It's like, listen, I don't know what's best for you, but you got to run the numbers, right? And I think that's important. But that little, that little red, the little red sliver, as I asked the question, I just asked it a minute ago. It's like, but if what you thought was true turned out not to be true, when would you want to know? Because there's also a concept called opportunity cost. And so, we make a decision and we have a certain outcome, but if we made a different decision, that could be good or bad. So if it was a bad decision, what would be the opportunity cost? And so so having correct information that's relevant, I can make a huge difference. So what we ultimately want to do is we want to take this information and we just want to make your blind spot a little smaller, right? And I was actually, you haven't seen this before. Do you want to play a little game?
Sure.
This is going to be kind of fun. So my question to you, James, do you think your income as an American is common or uncommon?
Ooh, I have no idea. Let's say common.
Okay. To be in the top 50% of income earners in the United States, how much money do you think we'd have to make?
Let's say
in terms of the household.
let's say 75,000. I have no idea.
75,000. Okay. What about the top 25%?
I'm gonna say 120,000.
You said 125?
Sure, 125.
Okay. All right. What about the top 10%?
I'm gonna say above 200,000.
200,000. All right. Top 5% of household incomes.
In America, let's say 250,000.
250? Okay. So the top 1%. So the top 1% of American households, how much money you have to make to be in the top 1%?
Let's say 500,000.
500,000. There we go. All right.
I have
Perfect.
no idea, by the way.
All right. Well, let's kind of see right here. So to be in the top 50%, the household income is a little over 42,000.
Wow.
Top 25% was 85. All right. What do you think the top 10 is? Is that your final answer?
I'm gonna go down to 100. I'm gonna cut that at 152.
150, 152. Top 5. Yeah, that was pretty close. We're at 220. And you're actually not too far off from that too. So I guess there's a lot of really, really rich people that bring that up. Okay.
That's crazy.
$42,000. Okay. I mean, that's what the average person spends on a car, at least in my circles, right? So what happens is that when we think about common income versus uncommon income, we tend to associate with the people that we hang out with. And so if we're in a higher or a lower economic, group, that's kind of our perspective, right? So we'll kind of take that to the next thing. So this is kind of where we start getting to the kind of financial planning aspect. And you cannot do planning without kind of talking about taxes. So what percentage of taxes do you think that the top 1% pay?
I'm gonna say 35%, 36%.
Close. So the top 1% pay 42% of overall taxes.
Wow.
Top 5% pay almost 63% of the taxes. Top 10, almost 74%, 88. And the top 50 basically pay 98% of all the taxes that come into the treasury. So let me ask you this. Do you have any idea what our federal deficit or the debt is, the deficit?
Oh gosh, I want to say it's like 20 trillion, 30 trillion.
No, it's actually it just passed 34 trillion like this year or just in the last whatever months. So it's crazy. So, and again, this is a political year, and both sides are going to make each other look bad. But the bottom line is that it doesn't matter who's in office. Both the Democrats and Republicans are equally as responsible to raising the debt, right? So that's a problem. And so where do you think Congress is going to look for money to bring in? Are they going to look at the bottom 50% of wage earners? No, they're going to look at the top 50% of wage earners because guess what? You may think your income is uncommon, or actually maybe, yeah. So technically your income is uncommon because you're probably in the top 10%, or maybe in the top 1%. Who knows? I don't know about your finances, but the point is that this is where the government looks to get tax revenue, are the people who actually are making more money. So congratulations, you are a wealthy American. It may not feel that way, but that's kind of how you are, how it is. So it's just kind of interesting that there's about 1.6 million households that make up the 1%, 7.9 that make up the 5%, 15.7 that make up the 10%. A little over 39 million make up that. And also, here we are, almost 79 million households make up the top 50%.
And what's
So
crazy is that the average retiree may not know exactly how their retirement will be impacted by taxes and decisions that government
yeah.
will be passing going into the future. I mean, without doing anything, we know at least in the next 2 years it's going to go up with Trump's tax cuts.
Yeah, the Tax Cuts and
Sunrising.
Jobs Act. Yep.
So being able to have this information is vital, really, to them being able to make the correct decisions on what they do and with their retirement.
Right. So, I mean, again, I specialize in retirement income planning, right? And so what happens is that you've accumulated all this money through your adult life, and you've got X amount of dollars in your investments and real estate and whatever you have. Okay. So how do you transition from accumulation to distribution? Okay. So, well, and by the way, we're going to be talking about the 3 different distribution strategies in our next podcast coming up. But ultimately, you've got to pull money out of investments and have various sources of income to maintain your standard of living. And here's something that we come across. So, what have you and everybody else been told to invest in your 401k? What was the pitch? Hey, invest in your 401k. You get a current year tax deduction. So if you make $100,000 and you put $10,000 in your 401k and the pre-tax account, you're going to get a current year tax deduction. So your taxable income will drop from $100,000 down to $90,000. Hey, that's great. I'm paying less tax today. That's really, really good. Okay, cool. So people do that for decades. And now they got a bunch of money in their 401ks. They say you got $1 million, $2 million, or whatever, 500, I mean, whatever it is. You got a bunch of money in your qualified accounts. Okay. Well, did you ever pay tax on that money? No. So people kind of knew that they had to pay tax on it when they pulled it out, but they didn't understand the collateral damage that was going to occur when they made that first contribution decades ago. Because what happens is, and we're going to do another podcast on this, on basically how qualified accounts work. But basically what qualified accounts do, James, is that not only do they defer the tax, but they defer the tax calculation. Meaning that they not only, they postpone the tax and they postpone the tax calculation. So if we are in a lower tax bracket, that's good. We got a tax break. I'll make it up at 25%. But when we pull it out, maybe we're pulling it out at 22%. I'm just making up a number. But if we're in a higher tax bracket, when we pull the money out, let's say we got a 25% tax, we got the deduction at 25% on the way in, but maybe we're in the 28 on the way out. Now we kind of lost that bet. So what you have to kind of think about is, well, what tax bracket will I be in when I take the money out? And then another thing that we're going to talk about in different podcasts, but a big thing that I talk about with my clients is legislative risk, the risk of taxes changing all the time. And what really is challenging and frustrating about retirement income planning and tax planning is that they keep on changing the rules. So it's like, here we are in the playoffs for football, and they're going to kick a field goal, and it's like, boom, they hike the ball. The kicker kicks the ball. It's up in the air. And all of a sudden they move the goalpost. So what you thought was on track, now they move the goalpost. And that's what's happening with tax law. Congress can change the law anytime they want to. So, and we just kind of mentioned that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is going to expire at the end of 2025. Yeah. And so, that's going to sunset at that point. So, and right now, the government is so dysfunctional that the chances of them coming up with some sort of, tax legislation, I don't know. You tell me what are the odds of our two parties getting together and actually agreeing on anything?
It doesn't appear that there's any chance anytime soon.
Right, and so it's just so frustrating being American with Congress, and I've never seen it more divided. But the point is that when you're doing retirement income planning, you have to take taxes into consideration.
Yeah.
And so one of the big conversations that I'm having with everybody are Roth conversions, and we'll do a separate, thing on that. We'll go deep into it. But, a Roth conversion, if you guys are not familiar with that, all it is that you're taking a distribution from a qualified plan, which is a 401k, basically a pre-tax account. You take a distribution, you pay the tax, and that ends up either in a Roth IRA or, let's say, cash value life insurance. There's the two tax-free buckets that you can kind of put money into and not pay taxes ever again.
Yeah.
So when you get to the kind of level of planning that I'm doing with clients that are fairly affluent, people, it's not about, oh, I'm a better money manager than what you're doing. Yeah, we manage lots of money, but that's not even coming into the conversation. What's coming in the conversation is that how can I take distributions from my accounts, meet my retirement goals, not run out of money, but also keep as much in my pocket as I can, right? And that's driven by taxes. So a lot of the planning that we do revolves around, different tax strategies to minimize taxes. And a lot of that has to do with, well, how do you feel philosophically on where taxes are going? And so a question I ask, I say, James, do you feel that taxes are going to go up, down, or stay the same? What are your thoughts?
Personally, I feel like they're just going to keep going up. I don't know how they can come down. I mean, I'm
Okay.
not the lawmaker, but with the rising debt that we have, I don't know how it's to pay for it other than taxes.
Right. So most people will say exactly what you just said. The question is, well, how highly do you believe in what you just said? Because
I
guess what? It's going to come
wholeheartedly,
down to writing a check to the government to pay the
yeah,
taxes, right?
yeah.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
I wholeheartedly believe that they're going to go up. I mean, I worry for my kids too. And
Yeah.
10, 20, 30 years from now, when my kids have started to grow up and they're now adults, I worry. I worry for
Yeah.
them. So,
You know, I'm in a not so low tax bracket. All right. And my personal 401k and my wife's TSP, she's a federal employee, we're putting 100% in our Roth 401k and Roth TSP. We are foregoing the current year tax deduction, which hurts right now because that's less money in our checking account today. But what happens is, we're recording this video in January 2024. So what happens, James, if we fast forward 20 to 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, and taxes are much higher? I can't. It was so nice to be in the tax bracket we were back in 2024. So, I'm making the bet that taxes are going to be as high or higher tax bracket. Now, remember, if my tax bracket doesn't change ever, then I'm no worse off, right? I just pay the taxes now. And all that money in the Roth IRA just continues to grow, grow, grow. So if taxes never change, then I'm no worse off than I would before. So anyway, I'm making the bet that taxes are going to go up, and we're putting our money into in the Roth. So we're going to grow that on a tax-free basis. And there's other advantages of that in terms of obviously there's no requirement of distributions. Roth IRA money also is not included in provisional income to calculate Social Security, all that kind of stuff.
there's a lot. There's a lot that goes into retirement, and I think what people will find as they listen to this podcast is they will increase, or I should say, they'll decrease those blind spots that you were talking about at the beginning of the episode. That they'll find these insights and really, truthfully, finding key strategies that they're not being taught elsewhere. They'll come to this podcast, subscribe to this podcast, and come and listen to this because it's going to help you as you make decisions wherever you go and whatever you do. You'll want to know these insights. Jim, thank you so much. This has been a great episode. We're excited to get this started and ramped up going forward.
No, I'm super excited, and we've got so much stuff that we're going to go over in the next year. So I'm committed to do one a week for quite some time. So I want to thank everybody for for listening. And again, I'm gonna be putting these up on YouTube. So just all I ask is just hit that little like and hit subscribe. Just that's just help me get the word out. And what I'd ultimately like to do is that when people do a search on YouTube or whatever for whatever topic, I'd like my podcast to come up, because I'm going to be giving great information, no fluff. This is going to be really solid information that you need to consider when you're making these decisions. And we've got all sorts of topics that we're going to be talking about. So we are super excited about this, and we hope that you subscribe and become a consistent listener, because I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And I think ultimately you'll be better equipped to make better financial decisions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Jim. If anybody has any questions, go check out Jim and their website at jimmusgrave.com. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
All right. See you then.